are shutting many of them out of the learning process. And aside from the digital divide that has historically and now currently impacted many of our efforts to communicate with and teach our English learners, we know that designated ELD at the secondary level is most challenging. There are many questions on how to deliver direct instruction, when, and with what curriculum. So today, our intention is that you learn from peers and that you share your experiences, ask questions, and raise issues that will still need to be addressed after this Zoom. We know that teachers are working very, very hard and doing extraordinary things. We want to hear your voices, we want to learn from many of you, and then be able to advocate for more attention to serving our English learners during this very difficult period of time. So today's Zoom, you have probably already met him virtually. We'll have the behind the scenes tech support provided by Ed Campos, and we want to thank him for assisting us. You all will be muted during the panel sharing. Our agenda will begin with 3 presentations from the field focused on the delivery of ELD from those in the field making it happen. After, we will move into breakout rooms for you to ask questions and learn from each other in a smaller group. We will come back as a whole group to uplift promising practice, innovations, and also questions and concerns. And as you can see, the chat box will be monitored for questions and comments. And also, when in the breakout rooms, you will have access to a Google slide for note-taking. Just as another reminder, this is the official position from the California Department of Education on the delivery of ELD during school closures. And we can't say this enough, but English learners must continue to receive both designated and integrated ELD as part of their educational curriculum. Of course, we know that districts have flexibility to determine how the services will be provided. They can determine when, where, and what students receive in order to make progress towards English language proficiency, as well as meet grade level academic achievement. And although there are no minimum number of minutes that are required, ELD is considered a required course of study for English learners. ELD is core for our English learners. And so with that, I just want to mention, I think we have over 315 of us on this Zoom. And so the input that we receive will help us inform our advocacy efforts on behalf of English learners, both locally and statewide. And so we ask each of you to participate very actively in your small groups, submit comments in the chat box, and equally important, if you haven't, complete the survey that was sent earlier, sent last week, and sent again. And please do so after attending the session. So we are going to get started. And so our first presentation is led by Leslie Riston, who is currently the English Learner Program Specialist in San Juan Unified. And she is responsible for professional learning and the implementation of ELD K-12 throughout the district's 60 school site. She leads a team of teachers on special assignment, supporting both integrated and designated ELD. So joining her are Megan James and Julie Sagata, both ELD teachers on special assignments. So Leslie, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. So go to the next slide. So just for context, we're up in Northern California in Sacramento area. We're a 75 square radius, 75 mile square radius, 103 sections of our secondary ELD across the district. We have 9 middle schools, 9 high schools, and we support 33 designated ELD teachers right now. We have some part-time that they might teach a section or 2 sections, but right now we're really focused on supporting around 33 designated ELD teachers. Some Other districts might be mostly heavy on Spanish, but we have a very high refugee population. And so this is the 2018-19, we're over 6,000 English learners in our district. And they are ranging from Spanish, Arabic. We have a Farsi, Dari, and Pashto community from Afghanistan and other Middle Eastern countries. And there are a lot of newcomers coming in on special immigrant visas. So before starting, the instructional piece, we did initially connect and communicate with our families. We're still always trying to connect. We did translate over 62 different COVID-related documents into our languages. We have ensured our devices, as many as we can, for both staff and families. Some of our bilingual instructional assistants needed some connectivity. They needed Chromebooks themselves and our families. So we're providing some internet hotspots. At secondary, we've distributed over 6,000 devices, and we were continuing to provide meals. And we have bilingual instructional assistants that help support within Zoom meetings, within calling home, with helping make videos so that students can actually, and families can hear, like in Farsi, how to log into their Google Classroom, things like that. And then we also have been working with our teachers on how to foster successful distance learning, and really about being flexible, but also keeping a schedule so that kids have routine and structure. And that's what we've tried to embed into this work that we're going to share with you, as well as flexibility, knowing that some of our kids are on late at night, they're not able to get on, they're sharing devices, things like that. So that's really what we wanted to focus on first, and getting our teachers on how to use Google Classroom for everyone, how to use the other platforms such as Zoom or Flipgrid, things like that, that the ladies will be talking about. And really creating a structure for our students and our teachers at the same time. So we've been supporting our teachers, and I'm going to send it to Julie. I think she's
perfect. Next. Maybe, yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so as schools closed, we were in the middle of, there we go. As schools closed, we were in the middle of testing, and we wanted our students to continue receiving the same types of assignments that they've been exposed to leading up to the school closures. The sequence that we chose was modeled after the LPAC task types. So you can see there are 2 grids on your screen. The bottom left is an overview of 4 different sets of assignments or tasks that lead up to each other. And then the one that's blown up on the right is zoomed in on a specific set. So you see that we are intentionally hitting the listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and then have a culminating task for each intentional set. So where there are rubrics, there's a link to the LPAC rubric for that specific task. And we've also created a folder for text at 4 different Lexile levels so that teachers can differentiate easily by selecting the appropriate level of text for their students. So students have already been exposed to these task types before leading up to the closures, so we felt it would be comfortable for them as they switch to a distance learning platform. We hope that our students might be able to come back and still take the LPAC test, even in September, right? So we wanted a simplistic way for teachers to have access with hyperlinks that they could click on. So as they formatively assess their students and continue to think of ways that they might need to explicitly craft different lessons, they could chunk the lessons or review over Zoom. Okay. There we go. So since we know that English learners need face-to-face contact, interacting with their teachers and peers in real time, teachers are using Zoom for synchronous meetings about 2 to 3 times per week. The focus of the Zoom sessions, though, are mainly relationship building and maintaining a sense of classroom community, because this is very important for tending to the social emotional needs of our students. Some students have shared and described their homes, their pets, and their personal items. And then teachers also use this time to answer student questions and clarify any lines. In order to be flexible with our family schedules, we do want much of the actual explicit instruction to happen asynchronously, where students can access it at any time. So teachers have been using either YouTube or Screencastify to record mini lessons that students then are able to view at any time with explicit instruction that would support students as they work through these interactive assignments. So task would then use that information and continue to build the academic language both receptively and productively. Students then would manipulate slides or record themselves producing language. We've labeled the work as sets so that teachers have some flexibility to set the pace and break down tasks as needed. And since Megan and I as TOSAs have developed the tasks, the teachers then have more time to upload any new videos of mini lessons as needed to support their students' learning. Passing it over to Megan if she's unmuted in there.
Thank you.
There you go.
So as Julie talked about, just as our students need some structure and flexibility, so do our teachers. They were looking for structure, but flexibility in how they implemented that structure. So we use the same template for each set of tasks, as well as a set of tools like Flipgrid or Vocaroo that allow language production, but isn't a whole bunch of resources that just overwhelm them. We suggest getting good at a few things rather than continuing to add more and more resources or digital tech resources to what they're doing. Even though there are great things out there, it can just be too much and too overwhelming for some of our teachers. We supported teachers with materials that include structured outlines, learning targets, and success criteria, all of which can easily be embedded into Google Classroom. We also know how important it is to align our instruction with the standards and give students the opportunity to practice the language and formats used in various contexts. So in order to provide ongoing support for teachers, we hold a weekly Zoom collaboration meeting with each group of teachers, middle school and high school. And together we work through the planning template that you see there on this slide. We first debrief how things are going and together determine what students might need to be successful on each assignment. Then we discuss how the teacher can provide those things for their students, as well as if there are things we might need to develop in the next set. After that, we'll collaboratively develop a list of materials, which may include things like explicit instructional videos and audio clips, and then divide the work with the goal of meeting students where they are in order to scaffold up. This then will help us to generate a bank of lessons and materials for everyone to use together. Next slide. The tasks are assigned in Google Classroom because that's the platform that most of our teachers at secondary use, but these could be used in other learning management systems as well, like Schoology or Canvas, if that's what your district uses. Most of the assignments are made with Google Slides and are meant to build in routine and structure as they repeat with new texts and themes. This way, after the first few assignments, students will become more familiar with the structure. We post each slide deck with learning targets and success criteria on the first slide so that students know what they need to use in order to be successful. In initial Zoom meetings with teachers, the teachers walk students through the process as well as videotape themselves modeling a think aloud for metacognition. In ongoing Zoom meetings, they can continue to provide meaningful feedback along with lessons or activities for remediation or reteaching within Google Classroom. Because the tasks and lessons are asynchronous and we will likely be able to test some students in the fall, We can use these materials to help catch them up, review, or practice. These will also be used long-term as we look at how to support students later on, and we can continue to create ongoing resources for teachers in the future. Oh, there it is. So in order to create the materials that we've presented here, we used a variety of resources. We started with the LPAC practice tests to format our assignments and utilize the rubrics as our success criteria for many of the tasks. We provided students with visuals and videos of concepts or lessons using Google Images, YouTube, and Screencastify. We provided students with audio for listening tasks from YouTube and Vocaroo. And then, knowing our students are at varying reading levels, we wanted to provide students with leveled texts to either mimic the levels of the LPAC or to help students be successful with certain tasks. We were able to do this with a variety of resources such as Newsela, Reading A to Z, and Achieve the Core. We used Achieve the Core to find a student exemplar text for the Read a Student Essay task. Finally, but arguably most important, we need to ensure that our students are using and receiving feedback on their use of oral academic language. That can be difficult with asynchronous learning, so we suggested teachers use resources like Flipgrid and Vocaroo to have students record themselves speaking and responding to specific prompts in the tasks. We definitely don't have all the answers, but we are looking as we go by receiving feedback and listening to teachers, being added into Google Classrooms as co-teachers, and looking at student work. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. And the button on the slide there will take you to a Google folder with all the resources that we have developed so far, and will be updated as we add more resources to it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, San Juan Unified. Thank you, Leslie, Julie, and Megan. And hopefully you'll stay on the Zoom so that at the end, if there are any questions, you might be able to answer them. So thank you so much for sharing your hard work on behalf of English learners. So on to the next presenter. Our next presenter is Charlene Freed. She is an ELD bilingual English teacher at Sierra Vista High School in Baldwin Park. And she also works at the university level as a part-time instructor with aspiring teachers. She is a GABE Teacher of the Year, a NABE Teacher of the Year, an LA County Teacher of the Year, Bilingual Directors Association Teacher of the Year, and the recipient of numerous other awards. Today, she's sharing designated ELD distance learning strategies. Charlene?
Very much for caring so much about our English learners. Okay, I'm going to start out by saying that I was the only ELD teacher at our school, so I only represent one school, Sierra Vista High School. We do have another wonderful ELD teacher this year, but right now that we're on this distance learning, I have a class from 9 to 10 for ELD, and then from 10 till 11 on Mondays and Wednesdays, I have senior English for English learners, and that includes beginners all the way to the LTELs. We have a lot of students who come in their senior year to graduate. We have a lot of students who were born here, went back to their countries, and came back as seniors because they so desperately want to go to college here. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have another ELD class. Okay, as most of you have heard and said, doesn't fit into that time period. So many of our kids have had to go to work. They can't come to the time period. So we have had to make a lot of phone calls, meet at night, and do all sorts of different things to accommodate the needs of our students. I think first we had to listen to our students, and then we had to respond to their needs, and then we had to develop lessons. So what I'm going to share with you today is a little different. I really didn't go into the standards because this is honestly what we're doing right now. At the beginning of this school year, I asked my students to compare their homes in their countries to this country, because I had newcomers. And it's interesting because a lot of them said, well, in our country, we always woke up to our abuela's music. And here the neighbors are always telling us to shut up. And in our countries, we would wake up to the smell of our grandmother's cooking, even though we didn't like it, we loved it. And here, we opened up last night's McDonald's. And they said in their home countries that they always had time to talk to their families, and here their parents are always running off to work. So when this online learning came, I think that my main goal became to reconnect the kids with their families, because so many families are out of work. So in a way, that's what I did. And we eat dinner together. Like we might have a class at 6 o'clock at night, and I'll tell the kids, bring dinner, we'll all sit there and eat together. The seniors, every year we have a dinner in my classroom for the seniors because they're very special to us. And so this year we're gonna have the dinner online because there's nothing else we can do. We're all gonna bring our food, we're gonna eat there together and talk about it. But I think that those connections, like you've all said, are what are so important to what we're doing, okay? Okay, so with that said, when we first met, because on March 13th, we didn't know until after school that we would not be seeing our kids again. So when we said goodbye to them all day, we said, see you Monday. And then at 3 o'clock, they couldn't come back on campus. They couldn't say goodbye to us because LA County had made this decision. And of course we had to comply. So my first idea was what I called a human drawing X-ray profile. And my idea was that the kids would take a picture of themselves, because it took us a couple of weeks to get online, take a picture of themselves and have their body parts talk and react to the coronavirus. And I'll show you later how we interact with this via Zoom. But the kids, what they did, I didn't expect to cry when I saw their little faces with their pictures. I'm still deeply amazed at what they did. So I put right here, we've done this right here. You see there, Pancho Villa. We take this structure like a graphic organizer, where they take political figures. We did it when there was the wonderful election, last election, with all the different political figures. We do it with authors, characters, and they make the different body parts talk, and then they act out through role play that character. And then I have them do a composite quote at the end, and I have this all typed out in depth for you so you can get it afterwards. They take that composite quote and use it as a theme or a thesis for an essay. Then they work with a partner and they compare and contrast how their body parts react to whoever they are, or right now with the coronavirus. When we started this activity at the beginning of the school year in our real classroom, the kids faced each other, they drew their partners, they interviewed their partners so that they could decide how their body parts would react to different things, like her eyes sees the poverty in the world, and she's going to become a dietitian so that she can help people learn how to do well with their resources. So it's a really, really, really beautiful activity. So that's mine there. This is Pancho Villa. I let my kids work in English or their own language right now because they are going through a lot of stress. Okay. These are some of the ones I got. And I just want you to look carefully at this one. This is Bruno and Merlin. They're new students. Bruno came from Mexico City, highly, highly educated. And if you look at what he said, let's see. My heart feels sad for the people that are getting this coronavirus. So my heart feels sad for the people who. So he has little errors, but basically he writes beautifully, yes? And we didn't put his composite quote here, but after everything he said, if we work together and do good actions, we are going to survive and pass for this. And then that became the theme for his essay. Okay, obviously highly educated. Look, my feet miss wear my sneakers to school. He's doing very well for a first-year student, yes? Merlin is from Guatemala, and Merlin never went to school in Guatemala. So look at hers. No touch my eyes, wash my old time, clean my hands, the old time, forever time, doing my stuff. Stay me, save my family for my family. So you could say as a teacher, what's that? It makes no sense. Or you could read deeply into what she's saying and understand that that English says a lot, even though it's not there yet. So this is the first activity. Change again. Okay. So these are other ones. Okay, other problems we're facing. See Emilio right here? On March 13th, when they were told the campus is closed, he went back to Mexico to a little ranch outside of Jalisco. He said I had to go home to my mom. He tried and tried to call me. We couldn't get through because he lived in a little ranch. Finally, I took the number and I got him. He said I had to come home because my mom's here alone. And if nobody went to work, she would die anyway. So I came back. So he put at risk graduation. We have 3 seniors who are doing that. But what we're trying to do is still connect with them long distance so that they can still graduate. A lot of them have applied for scholarships that are still pending. A lot of them are planning to go to college. This kid here quoted, but in the end, one needs more courage to live than to kill himself, and that's from Camus. This little girl right here, Hannah, didn't take a picture. She drew herself, but look what she said: graduation, just a dream. God is our refuge and strength. Hannah, her mother got cancer this year. And in this, I have to go really fast now. And in December, Hannah's family was in a serious car accident. They were hit by a run-on driver. There's her brother who wrote in Spanish. She just won the Rocio scholarship, which was about a guy who went to Harvard and went back to Mexico with his mother because his mother had cancer. She died. He couldn't come back into this country to finish his studies in Harvard. Now he's giving scholarships to other kids. So about online learning, you can read about cancer and write about it and answer questions. But if you don't hear the person's story, how are you really going to know what cancer is? So that's been my goal with this online learning. Okay, these are just 2 more. Okay, Jonathan Canchola is in my senior English class. He's an LTEL. Look how he writes. How are you lazy every other day of your life, but can't be lazy during quarantine? But that's his English, where it is. Next. Okay, how many more minutes? Okay, I'm gonna go really fast. So the next one is the Academy Awards presentation, and this is how we incorporate the Zoom. So the kids get to break up in groups of 4. We put them in a chat room, like Marta and I and Leslie and Julia. We face each other. I share my coronavirus drawing with her. She shares hers with me. Then I share hers to the group. She shares mine. Then we come to consensus. We choose a winner. We decide why that person has won. We create a sponsoring organization. We go back to the main room. We have a master of ceremonies. The person stands up and says, visualizes the size of the audience. Good evening. We are here today to present this great award to this person who has written this beautiful quick write because the person comes up, goes, thank you. Again, visualizes to increase vocabulary. Oh, Abuela, you came all the way from Nicaragua. Thank you so much. And then gives a winning story. And all of this is here. But to me, this has listening, speaking, reading, writing, also comprehending and retelling, coming to consensus, working collaboratively. And it's work that we've done it 3 times in chat room to main room, chat room to main room with stories like this. Okay, next. Okay, so one of my students, Carolyn Wang, had this idea. She said, let's create a superhero to save us. So the next project was to create a superhero. And if you look here, they had to create a superhero just like when they had to do themselves. They had to create a superhero that had powers who could come to Earth and save us. So again, this is tapping our prior knowledge. What do the kids know about the coronavirus? What can they do? We made a little specific 10 adjectives to describe the hero, 5 verbs. And then they had to write a story about how their superhero was going to save the Earth. Go back into the chat rooms to the whole boom, 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 boom. Choose a winner, choose an organization, choose a prize. And the whole point of this public speaking to me, besides practicing, was that in a way college kind of got stuck because, I mean, we're still trying to figure out, like 2 of my kids got into Cal Poly Pomona. Is really hard right now because of communication, but I don't want any of them to give up hope. So if you look at these, here's her superhero. And here's another one. And all of them are so beautiful, but here, like you really see the prior knowledge. It won't hurt him because he has a built-in vaccine to protect him. He brought it with him from his planet other than Earth. Last one. Okay. This is a long-term English learner. He goes, when Bobby was a child, he was very lazy. And then he said, Bobby knew it would be foolish to use his powers on himself. Instead, he saved them for the right moment to keep the coronavirus and save the world. So I think that this has been a really valuable activity for our kids because 1, they were afraid. And two, by addressing this coronavirus right on, they were able to really understand it, to express themselves, to understand they didn't understand. Why am I in? Especially, I have a whole senior class of English learners, first ones to graduate in their families. A guy from Honduras, we collected money for him to bring his mom here, no graduation. So we tried to make it still, especially with the presentations, like we're honoring you, we're doing this. And I think it's been really valuable. Our last project is going to be, they're going to create a book called Mi Familia, My Family. And I'm going to have them do different chapters on different family members, because like I said in the beginning, one of the main things that my kids said about coming from another country is we don't see our parents. Either we don't live with them or they don't have time for us anymore. You in the classroom are the only people who talk to me. So that's how we're going to end. And hopefully it's going to create a forum where the kids are going to interview father, mother, grandmother, and make chapters on each person. Then we're going to go back into the chat rooms, share the stories, honor, and hopefully when this is over, the kids will be ready for college. The kids will have acquired more English. And I just remember that old quote, English is not learned, rather it is acquired naturally. And I guess that's what we're trying to do right now. As you've all said, we make mistakes, we're experimenting, but to me, the love is there. And I think also that this is a house. You can look at our faces, we can love each other, you can look at your students' little fingers, you can look at their eyes, and we still have to love them and go on as well as we can. Thank you.
Charlene, thank you. Thank you. I know that your presentation comes from your heart, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. And hopefully you can also stay till the end and answer questions.
Yes.
Our last presentation is by Efrain Tovar, and he is an ELA newcomer and computer science digital media arts teacher at Abraham Lincoln Middle School in Selma. And he is a frequent speaker at conferences addressing how to utilize technology to meet the linguistic digital needs of second language learners and their parents. And so with that, Efrain, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here. It's so excited to be able to hear the wonderful things you guys are doing throughout the state of California and also beyond. Again, welcome to today's session. And so a little bit about myself. We only have one middle school in Selma, California, and so I'm in charge of all of the newcomers. Prior to departing, we have 17 students, but from the time my students departed till now, I've actually lost one student that left the United States and went back to Mexico. But prior to him leaving, definitely connected with him. And I think today's session, we really hear the heart of us as educators, as teachers, is being able to connect with our students, being able to hear their stories, being able to give them a place to be creators of content, not just consumers of content. And so really, as we communicate with their families, as we begin to engage our students, one of my primary goals, as many of us, is to connect with their students, to check in with them, to make sure that they're okay. So obviously, one of the things we all can start off with is, what is it that we value? And everything that we value really drives us as educators. And what we think of our ELs, what other educators think of our ELs, has a huge lasting impact in our ELs. And so there's this hashtag on Twitter called ELs can. And so as I'm hearing all of the great stories that you guys are sharing, it's like, it's evident that our ELs can, even during this unique special circumstance that we're in. And so one of the things that I kind of want to do today in the 10 minutes that I have is to really talk about, what are some things that I'm doing in the classroom. And again, we're constantly refining. We started out as, giving packets. We're still doing packets for all of our students, not just our ELs and so, but we're also doing the kind of a blended program. And so what you're seeing in my classroom on my screen right now is it allows me to definitely always connect with my students. And so one of the things prior to us sending the students, I have always advocated for bridging the digital divide. And so I know that is a theme amongst all of us as educators. How do we connect with our students? But prior to this digital divide, it's like Martha was saying, it's always existed. So luckily, we were proactive in Selma Unified in providing and acquiring hotspots for our newcomers. And so, and also training them with the necessary tools to become proficient innovators with technology. And so one of the things that I allow my students to do is to give me a call. Because of the uniqueness that we're in, my office hours are not just from 8 to 3. They're actually from 8 to 10. One of the things I've learned is that some of my students actually prefer checking in and actually communicating with me at night via text messaging. So I encourage you to, look into Google Voice as one means to be able to utilize technology without giving your personal information out. And again, a great way. Again, a to-do list and everything that you see on my screen here, the students also have a hard copy of the to-do list. Again, having them check their Google Classroom if they are able to. And fortunately enough, in my classroom, every single newcomer actually has digital access, whether it's through home or a hotspot that we have provided. And one of the things too is like being able to give students choice and a voice. And so giving them a challenge to be able to, hey, if you want to take up this challenge, every single day there's a challenge for you that has to do with English language development. And so again, how can we challenge our kids to some domains? A fifth domain is today's creativity, because creativity is one of the most essential skills that all people can acquire in being able to produce and being able to show understanding of content. So again, offline, understanding that all students have internet access. So what does it look like when you're providing English language development? So some activities that are listed here, and you will have access to our slide deck. And again, speaking, how can I utilize Google Voice as a learning tool? And so when utilizing the speaking domain, students can call into your Google Voice and be able to leave the response to a question that's inside a packet, if they have the packet. But if you're all digital, post those questions that provoke thought, and they are able to call in and leave a voicemail. And then what I do, Google will then transcribe their voice and be able to actually see whether or not they're practicing on their enunciation and pronunciation. Again, reading, giving them choice. One of the nice things about our school district is collaboratively we collaborated with other newcomers teachers, and one great teacher shared about how she was paying out of her own money to be able to provide books through Scholastic, and she had them drop shipped directly to their home. And so collectively decide that's such a great idea to give our students that are typically might not have the resources to purchase books. And so as a district, we're going to be able to provide these books and for our students, specifically our newcomers. So giving them opportunities to read. And again, writing, what does writing look like? Write a letter to me, to a friend, some just, great activities that you can do offline. In terms of online, everything that is being provided to my newcomers, as well as to my ELD2 students, it's also online. So again, we utilize RAS Kids because again, specifically with our newcomers and our LTELs that are level 2, we all know that they often struggle with what? With reading, right? And so RAS Kids is a great online application that allows you to individualize the reading to each student's unique Lexile level. We also utilize Imagine Learning. And so again, if you notice here, 15 minutes of reading, 15 minutes of language learning. And I've been intentional about that because of the feedback that I've been getting from my students. I do not want to inundate them with a lot of worksheets. I don't want to inundate them with a lot of learning, right? Because I realize that right now, they're all in survival mode. Many of my newcomers, some of their parents are actually working in the fields, And so they're at home taking care of their other siblings, right? So again, communicating with their students, being able to understand and know their story. So we know, 4 out of every 10 students in California are ELs. Arabic is one of the most spoken languages in California, especially here in the Central Valley. And so, knowing that, how do we leverage Google Translate to be able to minimize the language divide? So keep in mind that when you do use Google Translate, it utilizes MSA, which is Modern Standard Arabic. So in our Central Valley, many of our Arabic-speaking students and families come from the civil war-torn country of Yemen. And so, again, do they have the academic Arabic? Do they know MSA? Can they read it? Can they write it? And so sometimes the tools might not work because of the literacy. But again, great way to still make that intent to be able to communicate with your parents and or students. So again, we're talking about the hierarchy of needs for students. And again, great resource here by Dr. Jay Dostal. So take a look at that as you take a look at that. Again, we know as educators, as Google innovators, the #1 way that we can engage our families and our students is through cell phone technology. As a matter of fact, 96% of all Americans own a cell phone. Keep that in mind. So how are we leveraging cell phone technology, not only as a teaching tool, but also as a learning tool? And so we utilize Remind as a way to have a two-way communication with our students and their families, but as well as students and families are able to call us directly through Remind as well if they need to get a hold of us. Great resource for you guys. And so again, we can't talk about distance learning without discussing the digital divide. So I want you to know this is a great resource. Actually, the state of California has partnered with everyoneon.org as an organization that has been dealing with this digital divide for over 8 years. Great resource. Click on the link. Check out the homework app. Great way to get connected. Obviously, right now, devices is a big need for all of our students. Through everyoneon.org, there's actually organizations that provide Chromebooks free, depending on where you live and depending on your socioeconomic status. Okay, so great resource for you guys. So keep in mind, ELD is not a program. There's no silver bullet. It's a mindset, and what our ELs do must be different. So might we consider getting them, to be creators, right? And so great resources for you guys. Some great other resources on how best you can scaffold your teaching for your ELs as well. And again, I love to share this, especially with secondary teachers, because we have content teachers. So it's important for them to understand the 5 stages of language acquisition by Dr. Krashen, so that they know, hey, if I have a newcomer and they've been here 3 months, what stage are they in? So great resource for you guys. And again, tools do not build a house, what? Verbs do. So we must be intentional in terms of lesson design. A great resource by my Twitter friend, Tan Hoing. And so great resource for you guys to take a look at, as well as tips and strategies. Edu Protocols is a great tool that you guys can implement currently to be able to restructure, redesign your ELD lessons in a very meaningful part. And so I've included this 8 parts designated ELD that I use with my students. Again, giving them a picture and then having them think critically up at the picture. Great resource for you. I only have a couple more seconds, but I wanted to leave you with great resources, and you're not alone. You can connect with me via Twitter, via social media, as well as my email. Another resource that I developed for the English Learner Group, great resources here. Other apps that can be, that are not just suggested apps, but are apps that I utilize personally inside my designated ELD classroom. Again, in terms of best practices for distance learning, great resources for you in terms of ELD planning and reflection. This is something that I translated from one of my friends on Twitter, 5 remote learning tips for parents. And so how are we communicating to our parents? Are we utilizing social media like Facebook? Believe it or not, they are in Facebook. And so how can we empower parents and help parents in providing great resources? In terms of ELD development, how you can utilize Google Slides, you will have access to the slide deck, and anything that's in green is what students have to do when they work on English language development. So again, great friend Teresa Blanchard from Sanger Unified is an innovator here in the Central Valley. I definitely encourage you to check out sangerlearns.com. A shout out to them. Some great stuff that they're producing in Sanger. So please feel free to peruse through her resources. Follow her on Twitter. Again, great individual. And so for you techies out there that are interested, hey, what tool can I use for my students, for my subject, whether it's math, science, history, etc. I encourage you to visit EdTech Teacher. Select your learning activity, select the device type they're doing in grade level. It'll give you different resources for you guys to use. Again, today it's all about teamwork, being able to come together, all 381 of us, being able to share ideas, being able to collaborate with us. If you're not on Twitter, I encourage you to become a stalker of all of us, because really it's about sharing information. And there's no greater way to be able to share information. And many of us, right, we steal, we modify, we change. And again, everything that you have here is yours to use, right? So one of the things I want to leave you with, and I posted this in the chat room, again, it's about how can we get our ELs to become creators of content, not just doing worksheets, right? So I want to share with you, I want you to share your resources with all of us, all 388 of us here right now. Share your resources, create a book, challenge yourself to become a creator. Share your listening tools, speaking tools, reading, writing, creativity tools. How? By creating an ebook through Book Creator. Join our session. You'll have the slide deck where you can share the resources. All of you will be able to see the wonderful, great things that all of you are doing. And okay. And lastly, I want to leave you with this. Follow these are 16 individuals that I follow on Twitter. From the godfather of online ELD networking, Larry Ferlazzo, has over almost 72,000 followers. Great guy, is producing great content. Such a practitioner, teacher out of Sacramento, California. Great resource for you guys. So please follow these individuals. I encourage you to follow them. Great resources that are constantly producing and sharing. And again, if you're interested specifically on how to utilize Google as a Google innovator and trainer, I'm here to help you. As a matter of fact, on May 2nd, I'll be hosting a virtual Zoom on how we can specifically use Google tools to engage our ELs and also our parents. And with that, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Efrain. That was amazing how much you covered in such a short time, but thank you so much for all the resources and the inspiration. And so now we are going to go into our breakout rooms. Just want to remind you, next slide, please, of a few of the norms. And we want to make sure everyone remembers to keep the focus on designated ELD. We want to target this, ensure that everyone has the opportunity to share or ask a question. Again, there will be a Google slide in each breakout room for note taking, and be sure to assign a representative to share out to the whole room when we reconvene as a whole group. And again, the questions, next slide, are just how are you addressing designated ELD through distance learning? How often are you directly teaching students and directly interfacing and engaging with them? What are other ways that you are engaging students in the 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing? And Efrain, you'd be happy to know that I added creativity to that. And then what is the curriculum, or what materials are you using, and what are your questions? An opportunity to share a promising practice or a question. And if you go, please raise your hand by clicking the participants button, and so we'll check those. And so the first one on my list is, Heather Pentico. Yes.
So we shared out, or I shared out, what Cajon Valley Union School District and El Cajon is doing, which is to create a playlist, a daily playlist for students to mirror their general ed playlist, so that the English language arts standard that they're working on in that one is also mirrored in their designated ELD time, so they get that extra practice. And we also have 20 minutes a day of designated ELD office hours for our ELD teachers, so that just ELD students are able to come and get help or share their progress and interact with each other. The question that we had was how to contact and engage students who are difficult to reach, who didn't have technology when we left abruptly and weren't able to get a hold of them.
Thank you. Thank you. Teresa Montaño. Teresa, can she be unmuted?
Thank you. Our presenters had quite a bit of information on other programs that they were using. Screencastify was something that at least 4 folks spoke to. Flipgrid, Padlet, Google Voice, Seesaw, Push-In were promising practices or programs they were using. Most, in terms of when they see their students or speak with them, most said they were communicating with their students regularly, trying to communicate with them daily, but they actually connect or see their students on either Zoom or Google Classroom 2 or 3 times a week. And then we had a lot of folks who were actually not teaching, but were supporting ELD students by trying to contact them. Our questions were, folks want access to the presentations and the presenters, including ways that they might connect with the presenters. And again, like the previous speaker, folks spoke to difficulty in sometimes contacting students who don't show up. And that was it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Layla Kirkendall.
Yes. Am I unmuted? Okay. So we talked about some promising practice. We talked about our first question had to do with students that don't have tech, and what do we do in the meantime so that they don't lose their progress. So we talked about using some GLAD training, and that the GLAD training really lends itself to paper. And so we also talked about for things like for math, supplying them with paper, crayons, pencils, an actual whiteboard markers, etc., so that when you are able to speak with them, they have something to write on, they can erase, they can show you, etc., take pictures. We talked about the Listen Wise, which is a podcast with questions already prepared, or you can edit the questions, and that's a way for them to be able to listen to, so that listening domain. And then we also talked about using Edge, the National Geographic, creating those teacher PDFs and then putting them in through Google Classroom as opportunities for them to be able to read, etc. Our question is, what can we do to teach ELD for students who still do not have access to technology? And so those were the answers we were trying to kind of come up with.
Thank you very much, Layla. Next, we have Kristen Kent.
Hi. There was a couple of ideas shared with people in my group. One was a lockdown journal, so the students have a historical record of what life is like now. And another one that really caught my attention was just to simply have the teachers record the lessons so the students can access them when the timing is convenient for the students.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Sloan. There you go. We need to unmute Sarah.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Hi, sorry, I'm in the sunglasses. I also, just like Heather, am with Cajon Valley Union School District in El Cajon. We are going on a similar model, a little bit different though, with student choice boards, where we cover all the criteria: speaking, listening, reading, writing. We added vocabulary in there, similar to the Sanger choice boards that were shared last week. And then we tiered them with chili peppers. So tiered 1 would be like our LPAC 1s and 2s, and then we have 3 and 4. The questions we talked about in our chat were already shared. So I did have a new question that I wanted to pose. Newcomers. How is everybody dealing with brand new newcomers that they've never met in person before?
Okay. Leslie Smith. Leslie. You need to unmute her. She's still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Hi. We talked about a little bit about participation with our a lot of our English learners. About only half of the students in general are showing up to the Zoom meetings. And so one of the things that we talked about to reach out to families, we created a Facebook just for our Spanish speakers, because that is our main language, that second language that is spoken. So we've sent out, we've made videotapes of how to get on the technology, how to get on Google Classroom, how to get on a Zoom meeting. So all of those things have been in videos. So we slowly will push out those things through Facebook, because we know that they do communicate through social media. And one of the things I wanted to make sure is being able to get the slide decks for all the presentation people. They were fantastic. So that would be a request. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jason Locke.
Hi. Oh, wow, now I'm unmuted. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. We had some good conversations. Our promising practices, a lot of the time our students come to Google meetings, and we take some time to work through the process with them on what they're missing, what they can work on to be a little more successful in designated ELD or even integrated at some points. A lot of our teachers are providing office hours. That was a common theme, and the use of Microsoft Teams. Personally, I'm from Sanger. We use choice boards, as was pointed out earlier, and Ifarin, similar to what Ifarin was talking about when he was doing his presentation. Some questions that we did have, though: how might we increase student participation, especially when students don't check in at designated times? How can we search them down and get them to be successful and help them out? Especially since we've noticed that the newcomers do a little bit better at reaching out and asking for help than the LTELs in their designated classes or even the normal classes. So what can we do about reaching out to those kids that aren't necessarily buying into what's going on right now?
Okay, thank you. Jory Pratt.
All right. So my my group has lots of teacher specialists in there. And so a lot of our specialists were really working with their schools just to even get designated time for ELD in their districts. And so that was a frustrating, so I'm proud of them for that. And we're also talking about just the resources that we were using, since a lot of us did not have online curriculum. And so one of the things that we had found was using the ERWC, the Expository Reading and Writing program from Cal State. They have, so if we teach high school, they have middle school lessons there, which would be appropriate for a lot of levels of ELD. And they are really nice, structured reading and writing lessons. And we have all the same questions that everybody else has.
Thank you, Jory.
Thank you.
Stacy Wenzel.
Hi, Stacy Wenzel from Sequoia High School. So our group, seen at Zoom meetings, either Zoom office hours or synchronous teaching was something that a number of participants in our group found really helpful. Two of us are using either volunteers or mentors. So in my classroom during my synchronous instruction, we use Zoom breakout rooms, and the volunteers or instructional associate work in small groups with students so they have more time and more opportunity for reading and speaking exercises. And I shared something about some information about a pandemic journal. I heard someone else call it a lockdown journal. I think it was Kristen Kent. And I shared a link to the materials that I've modified from a project from the UC Berkeley. Our ELD specialist, Janelle Bucarini, shared a pandemic journal from, it was UC Berkeley's History and Social Studies project. And they have about like 7 different versions, including in Spanish. And then I modified it, included my own examples and videos and images, hyperlinks and whatnot on that. So if you're interested, you can look at that document and see some ELD versions of a lockdown journal for ELD 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Faith DeLuca. Just a sec.
All right.
There you
Okay,
go.
hi everybody. In our group, some people were not teachers, and they were just checking out what was going on. I shared some of the practices that I've been doing as an ELD teacher. I've used Flipgrid with great success, having students read anything at their house, whether it's their brothers and sisters' books or any article, and they just read for 1 minute for speaking. Doing a screencast, walk them through how to use Google Classroom each week and all the assignments that are expected so that they can hear the voice. And our question was, how do you re-motivate students after they believe that grades don't matter? And because we're expecting them to have internal motivation, there's no one there really pushing them or trying to get them to do things. So the question is, how do you re-motivate them after they have decided, because we do know we have the ELs with the needs, the food and the lodging and all of that, but we also have the ELs that are like, oh, this doesn't matter, and don't really understand the value of the education. So how do we get that to them? So that was our question.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Arroyo. Okay, Nancy.
Hello, everyone. Our group, we had great discussions, and we had from directors to TOSAs to teachers. And so we were all talking about how it works different in different districts. Some districts have online platforms that their teachers have to use to meet with their students. Other teachers meet via Zoom daily or different hours. A lot of the resources have been already said, such as Seesaw, Rosetta Stone, bilingual language tutors, but we did have 2 questions in our group. One of them was, how can we help build academic language through distance learning? And the other is, what tools are out there to help develop academic language?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Monique Ortega.
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. So what I'm finding is I teach 9th and 10th grade, 2 sections, ELD designated. And the older kids well, I have 11th grade too. The older kids tended to not want to go online and do the work. They just thought that the grade didn't matter. They're going to pass the class if they have a D or above, and they're just hanging out with family and loving it. But what I found brought the large group into the class was humor. So I was sending out little funny memes about things that were appropriate for school, of course, and the kids were like emailing me like, oh, that's funny, You should make more of those. Can I make one for you? Because they're doing that. They're making videos and they're making TikToks and memes already, like all day long. How sometimes they don't love it and sometimes they love it or whatever. So I found that sending out little memes to get them to do another assignment is working for me. I don't have the luxury of Zoom because my students are overwhelmed of how to get a schedule going, and you can tell which kids are organized and which kids are not. But so anything that's where they make something or they're doing video. Podcasting is really nice, but I always podcasted before, so I think they're comfortable listening to podcasts. My question would be, how do I continue the engagement for the rest of the school year? Because I'm getting a lot, but how do I keep it going and they don't just shut it off? I guess that's it. Yeah.
Okay, we have one more, Lucy Del Rio. Well, yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, good evening. We had a lot of good conversation about a lot of what people have already stated, so I won't repeat the statements. And our questions were also around participation, and also if other districts are having success contracting for Wi-Fi hotspots, and if any companies are offering short-term contracts for Wi-Fi hotspots, and also how easy is it for families to connect. My IT department led me to believe that it might be a little bit more complicated than just having the Wi-Fi in the area. So I'd like to know the ease of it and any deals that are out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to the next slide? And I just want to say, you know, many of you have done a great job of synthesizing the takeaways. I know I'm just quoting from a couple of people, Alicia Garcia, who stated appreciating all the resources, actual lessons, the added domain of creativity to the 4 domains, and the notion we want our English learners to be creators of content. And of course, we loved all the presenters and all that they brought. And there was an appreciation for the small groups. You know, other takeaways, of course, are all the resources, the choice boards, the learning journals, the Zooms, the personal phone calls, etc. And just that whole need to connect on a personal level, you know, heart to heart with students and letting them know that we are there. Of course, there's lots of challenges in terms of student engagement and the whole grading and how to create that you know, accountability, but also that engagement on the part of students. And so, of course, we will be again getting all of the chat and you know, sending that to all of you. We just want to remind you also that we have some upcoming events and that next week we're continuing our focus on the secondary level, and we will be focused on integrated ELD for secondary teachers. Of course, you know, that's kind of really another big challenge. And then on May 12th, again on Tuesday from 4 to 5:30, we will be focusing on bilingual Spanish K-5 programs and teachers. The May 19th, we will focus on bilingual Asian. And on the 26th, our topic will be immigrant and refugee students. And we plan to also add additional sessions, which will be announced in the future, and we'll make sure to email everybody. And we want to make sure that you get all of our communications. And of course, don't forget, if you haven't already, to complete the survey. So Ed, our last slide, you know, we want to do I wish again in the chat box before you leave. We want you to write any wish that you might have for support for distance learning for ELs that could be offered and provided by the state, by your district, by your school, or colleagues, or Californians together. It's part of our advocacy. And so with that, I think we have a couple of minutes. I know that Ed would like to get some feedback on the tech support that we received for this particular Zoom community of practice. And I just really cannot express the appreciation that I have for each and every one of you, for all the work that you are, putting into ensuring that English learners don't get further and further behind, that they're not left behind. And all of you are doing extraordinary things. You wouldn't be on this Zoom if you didn't care and if you just didn't want to help. So with that, I don't know if Shelley or Shalene have any other ending comments, but I just again want to say thank you for sharing, and we will get all the resources to you, the presentations, and I don't know, I know Charlene had a question. I don't know if there were any questions for the presenters, anything that in the next few minutes we could address.
Martha, this is Jorge. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I wanted to just express a couple of advocacy questions that are arising from this context that we should bear in mind as we are working to support our legislature and our allies to consider what's happening. When we have devices and Wi-Fi, I think some of our families are worried about being pinged if they're undocumented, being exposed, if you will, by way of the devices. So it brings the question of low-tech, no-tech solutions to the forefront. So that would be one issue to concern ourselves with advocacy. Another would be the importance of the students who actually are getting onto the Wi-Fi and so on, the amount of time that they're expected to be on a device, because in the end, DLD is competing with other subject areas for the amount of time that the educators are assuming that the students want to be on the device. We have to remember that devices are also used for socialization by our students and for entertainment. So all that is adding up to a lot of tech time, and I think some of the families are concerned or do not have the means by which they can easily manage that situation once devices are brought into the household. I'm saying we do need to give it to them. They have to join the digital citizenry, but we also have to support our families to know how to manage these devices. In our region, we're concerned about the missing students. A lot of them are English learners. We believe that some of our students are transnational and have already returned to the other side of the border here because we're in San Diego. But we think that a lot of the families from across California are also going to be returning as the economy downturns. And some of these are actual US born kids who will have access to come back. It may be a temporary situation, but trying to figure out transnational solutions so that kids can continue being connected with their district of origin, especially if the schools don't open with online learning, is another concern that I think we need to be serious about. We've been in touch with the Secretaría de Educación Pública here in Tijuana, and they're expecting thousands and thousands of students to arrive who are not necessarily strong Spanish speakers coming back to the other side of the border with their families who are living this cross-border experience. So those are just some of the other things that are coming up as we're considering advocating for our students. In terms of feedback, my questions disappeared from my box where I was going to type. So luckily someone had transcribed it and pasted it and I found it. So that was just a small snafu that happened. I've talked enough.
Can I ask one thing? Can I ask one favor? Sorry. Martha?
All right, Ed. Yes.
So,
Ed, you can have the last word, Ed.
Really quick. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, we have an amazing free event this weekend for CVQ. Efrain, myself, I'm the president of CVQ. Efrain is the vice president. If I can plug CVQ, all about how to make this shift and help make this shift with grace, give ourselves some grace, with grace, and even have some fun with it. At the same time, it's going on this weekend, May 1st through 4th. I typed the link in there. I also want to say thank you guys, and can I leave? Can everybody just turn on their video and humor me real quick? And I'm gonna play a little song as we dance out. I want to record a little GIF of all the beautiful faces that I'm seeing right here. Is that okay? Okay, so I'm gonna play one of my favorite songs from Somali. It's called Cumbia de los Muertos, but because we're on a Zoom, we're gonna call it a Zumbia. So feel free to Zumbia your heart out right now, and I'm gonna start recording right now. So just get your oh. Yeah. Thank you guys for humoring me. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback too. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. That's all me. Sorry for taking the last time.
Adios, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.